Marcus stepped out into the rain before he could talk himself out of it. The cold hit him like a physical blow, instantly soaking through his $1,500 suit. His driver called after him, confusion evident in his voice, but Marcus barely heard him. "Sir, ma'am!" Marcus shouted over the roar of the storm, rushing toward the gate. "Are you all right?" Up close, they looked even worse than he'd feared. The woman's lips had taken on a bluish tint, and the man's eyes, though open, seemed unfocused, glazed with exhaustion. Neither of them responded to his voice at first, as if they'd moved beyond hearing, beyond hope. "Please," Marcus said, crouching down despite the puddles soaking through his Italian leather shoes. "Let me help you." "You can't stay out here?" The old man's eyes finally focused on Marcus's face. There was suspicion there, hardened by years of disappointment, but also something desperate. "We're fine," he managed through chattering teeth, the lie so obvious it broke Marcus's heart. "Just waiting for the shelter on 5th to open." They said 8 o'clock. Marcus checked his watch. It was barely 6:30. "That's 90 minutes away. You won't make it that long in this weather." He stood and turned to his driver. "James, help me get them inside." "Mr. Wellington, I don't think—" "Now, James." Between the two of them, they managed to get the couple to their feet and through the lobby. The doorman's eyes widened, his hand moving instinctively toward his phone, but Marcus shook his head sharply. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent except for the woman's labored breathing and the steady drip of water onto the marble floor. Marcus's apartment occupied the entire 42nd floor, a monument to success that suddenly felt obscenely large. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the glittering city, while inside, modern art worth millions hung on walls that had never heard the echo of children's laughter or the warmth of a family dinner. "The guest bathroom is through there," Marcus directed James. "Turn on the shower, warm but not too hot. We need to bring their body temperature up gradually." He grabbed his phone. "I'm calling Dr. Reeves." "Please, no." The old woman finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "We can't afford a doctor." Marcus paused, something cracking inside him. "It's taken care of. Everything is taken care of. What are your names?" "Dorothy," the woman said. "This is my husband, Frank. We don't want to be trouble." "You're not trouble," Marcus said, and he was surprised to find he meant it. Dr. Reeves arrived within 20 minutes, his house call fee enough to feed a family for a month. He examined Frank and Dorothy in one of the guest rooms, where Marcus had laid out warm clothes and blankets. The diagnosis was what Marcus had feared: early-stage hypothermia, dehydration, and in Frank's case, a respiratory infection that could turn serious without treatment. "They need rest, warmth, and medication," Dr. Reeves said quietly as Marcus walked him to the door. "But more than that, Marcus, they need someone to care." "How long have they been out there?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But I'm going to find out." Over the next few hours, as the storm raged, outside and Dorothy and Frank slept, in beds more comfortable than any they'd known in months. Marcus sat in his study and couldn't focus on anything. The quarterly reports on his desk, usually so captivating with their graphs of profit and growth, seemed meaningless. He kept seeing Dorothy's blue lips, Frank's protective arm, their determination to survive together even when the world had turned its back. Around midnight, he heard movement from the guest wing. He found Dorothy standing by the window, wrapped in one of his cashmere robes, staring out at the city lights. "Frank's sleeping," she said without turning. The medicine helped. "Thank you for that. We'll leave in the morning." "You don't have to leave," Marcus said. "Not until you're ready." Dorothy finally looked at him, and in her eyes he saw a lifetime of stories. "You're wondering how we ended up out there. People always wonder. They think we must have made terrible choices, been lazy, wasted opportunities." Her voice held no bitterness, only exhaustion. "I wasn't thinking that," Marcus said, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. "Frank worked for the same company for 40 years, Dorothy continued. "Assembly line supervisor. I was a teacher. We saved every penny, put 2 children through college. Then Frank's company downsized, and our savings went to medical bills when our daughter got sick. She survived, thank God, but we didn't. Lost the house, lost everything. Our kids have their own families, their own struggles. We didn't want to be a burden." Marcus felt something shifting inside him. Some wall he'd built brick by brick over years of corporate warfare. of seeing people as assets or liabilities, of measuring worth in dollars and cents. 3 months ago, Dorothy said, we would have been too proud to accept your help. But pride doesn't keep you warm. Pride doesn't save your husband. When he's coughing up blood, she turned to face him fully. Why did you stop? Most people don't. Most people just drive by. Marcus had to think about it. I saw the way he held you, he said finally. Like you were the only thing in the world that mattered. My wife used to look at me like that before the money changed things. Before I changed. Is she here? She's in Paris. Or maybe Milan. I can't remember. Marcus laughed. But there was no humor in it. I have everything. Mrs. Dorothy, everything except the one thing you and Frank still have. The next morning, Marcus made phone calls. His personal physician arranged for Frank's ongoing treatment. His real estate attorney found them a small apartment in a building. Marcus owned in Queens, rent paid for a year, renewable indefinitely. His HR director created positions at his company's community outreach program. Work they could do part-time, flexible enough for their age, but dignified, meaningful. When he presented the plan to them over breakfast, Frank started crying. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook his thin frame. Dorothy held him, and Marcus had to look away, something hot pressing behind his own eyes. Why? Frank finally managed. You don't know us. We're nobody. You're not nobody, Marcus said. You're two people who deserve better than what life gave you. And maybe I'm someone who needs to remember that money is supposed to mean something beyond just making more money. They stayed in the penthouse for a week while the apartment was prepared. During that time, Marcus found himself coming home earlier from work, lingering over dinner, asking about their lives. Dorothy told him about her students, the ones who still sent Christmas cards after 30 years. Frank shared his theory about the '69 Mets and why they were the greatest team in baseball history. They asked about his business, genuinely interested. And when he explained the complicated mechanisms of international finance, Dorothy cut through to the heart of it in a way his MBA-educated executives never did. So you make money by moving money around? She asked. Essentially, yes. But you're not creating anything? Not building anything people can touch? The question haunted him. On the day they moved to their new apartment, Marcus helped them pack the few possessions they'd accumulated. As they stood at the door, Dorothy hugged him tight. You saved our lives, she whispered. No, Marcus said, and he realized it was true. You saved mine. 6 months later, Marcus Wellington announced the creation of the Second Chances Foundation, endowed with $50 million and dedicated to helping elderly homeless individuals and families. The board members thought he'd lost his mind. His ex-wife called it a publicity stunt. The financial press speculated about his motivations. Marcus didn't care. He had dinner with Frank and Dorothy every Sunday, and he'd started volunteering at the foundation himself, meeting people whose stories reminded him that success wasn't measured in stock prices or square footage. He'd reconnected with his own children, started rebuilding bridges he'd burned in pursuit of the next deal. On the anniversary of that rainy November night, Marcus stood at his window, looking down at the gate where he'd found them. He thought about how close he'd come to driving past, to letting someone else handle it, to being the kind of person who could see suffering and look away. His phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy. Frank made his famous lasagna. Come hungry. Marcus smiled, grabbing his coat. Outside, rain was starting to fall, but it didn't look threatening anymore. It looked like possibility, like change, like the universe offering chances to be better than you were yesterday. He'd been a millionaire when he found Frank and Dorothy collapsed in the rain. But the real fortune, he'd discovered, was what they'd given him in return. The understanding that wealth without compassion was just loneliness with better furniture, and that sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back. The city lights sparkled like diamonds below, each one a story, a struggle, a chance for kindness. Marcus locked his door and headed out into the night, ready to live a life that finally meant something beyond the numbers in his account. Some treasures, he'd learned, couldn't be counted in dollars. They could only be counted in the warmth of a Sunday dinner, the gratitude in an old man's eyes, and the knowledge that when the rain came down and the world turned cold, he'd been someone who stopped to help.